of suffering that's gone before. Yeah.
Huh.
Mhm.
But then the question would show up from the perspective of a guide, since we're talking about that stuff.
Huh.
How would you how would you approach if we go in and we find somebody that can't seem to disidentify with thought, and we assume further that they can't disidentify with thought because they haven't had enough suffering to question the story. What what other method could you possibly use absent suffering to make them step back and see thought objectively to see that the story might not be true? And I asked the question and I have no idea what the answer is, but I just posed the question as maybe a think piece or something for the future.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording and start it again as we move into the main one. But I suspect, Paul, that we could ask Dennis this question, because he's recognised his suffering.
Every second video was so and so with so and so realizing their true nature, and it feels like it's happening everywhere with everybody, but yet I don't believe it. And I remember back to my earlier days with Adyashanti and the sense that this is quite rare, as opposed to people talking on YouTube about it happening willy nilly constantly. I feel really pissed off at the minute. Um, I know there was a bit of clarity a while back at a meeting, but it's gone. Whatever bit of clarity comes and goes is fleeting. So yeah, I'm very much identified with myself right now.
Mm. The first thing that I think of when you say that is stop. Stop doing it. Stop chasing it. Stop watching videos. Stop doing that. You're just whipping yourself. And none of those things are going to do it. I've seen people who've been avid meditators. I've seen people who've been through the Zen route to the point where they've become monks. I've seen people, and I spent over 45 years doing exactly what you're doing. I did. I mean, we didn't have YouTube back when I started doing this. We're going back now to when I was 20. I officially started 20. That was 57 years ago. So there was, the internet was in its infancy even. Well, it didn't exist then. It was after that it came along a bit. But nevertheless, I read everything. Well, back in those days, you'd order a book and wait 3 months for it to turn up, and they would cost $50 for a book, so they weren't
Mm.
cheap. But my obsession was I got a hold of everything that I could, and I chased down every glimpse of anything that was out there. I would chase it down, and I read my books again and again. I listened to things over and over. I did exactly what you're doing. I do know what you're doing. And I'm telling you, stop. It's not helping you. It is, in fact, a way of keeping away from what you're looking for. Because what you need to see isn't out there, it's in there, in you.
Yeah. Um,
While you're busy, you're also avoiding. Even though you don't know it, it looks like you're not. It looks like you're running towards something. But that's the illusion. You're actually looking in a mirror because you're really running away from something. And I get that. I do. They're kind of getting a bit vague for me now, but I do have a memory of the hopelessness of it. Will it ever happen? You know, I, I,
yeah.
I I went to meetings with Sailor Bob, and I just asked questions, and every time I got what they offered me down there, and there was John Wheeler was there from America, and they were all really big time gurus like Ajashanti, and it was just never came away feeling satisfied. And I now recognise that there was no possible way I could be satisfied because I was approaching it from a thinking level.
Yeah, I've been listening. It's funny you say what you said because I've been listening to that Robert guy and Robert Adams, or no,
Yeah, he's one. Yeah,
and the guy you spoke of, because he mentioned speaking to Taylor Bob and
yeah,
listening to people, they got it. They it's something you have to understand, and they understood it. And a lot of Robert Adams talks, listening to that,
yeah.
and it's kind of enjoyable. Like it's
Yeah. I get that too. Yeah. And the one of the most recent ones just before I woke up was Jed McKenna. You know,
oh yeah,
that trilogy. I listened to the audio books again and again and again, and I tell you, I got high on them. I got really high because it was
hmm
like, oh, I'm so close. I know what they're talking about, you know, and I got really, really high on it. And that's what you're getting. You're getting a high out of it, and that's what makes it so attractive. But it's not going to get you to where your experience is to know what they're talking about. It's the edge. It's on the edge. I even started at one point, I started a blog, and it's still up there. And it was called Vince on the Verge. That's what I named it. I had this feeling of inevitability. I reckon I was really close. So I thought I'll start a blog and I'll document myself as I go through the gate, you know. And I did that, but it was a year later. It was a year after I started the blog that it happened. So there you go. So I know that feeling of being on the edge, of being close, and yet at the same time being absolutely frustrated that, why can't I just get it? What is it? What's going on? Yeah. And with that,
yeah,
you go from high to low because you get really high when you think it's close, and then you go, fuck, it's not working, and then boom, down you go into a valley, and then back up to another high. Every time you watch another video, you get a high on, you know. You can deal with them, don't worry.
um, yeah. I suppose there's still even the subtle beliefs like I can't do this, or life, like I'm busy with life, with family, with work, with so
Well, that's
I'm like,
another one
okay,
too.
well,
Yeah. I'll jump in again.
yeah,
That that idea that those can't happen together. It's bullshit. So back when I did it, right, it was people used to go to India and they would renounce their everyday life in order to be 100% involved in this. That's how people did it back in the day when
mm,
I started, and I just figured that no, if I go to India, it's maybe I have to leave my family and go to India to do it. And I was so obsessed that I was prepared to do that. But luckily, I think that didn't work out that way for me. I now believe that that's just a lot of bullshit. That's just the way the tradition was back in those days, right? And they did have in India, they did have what they called a householder, uh, something or other, whatever word they used, Ararat or something. Um, so they were but they were the exception. They weren't the rule. And so there was a occasion. Well, now we it's not about you have this and that, and they're separate. They're not separate, right? So where you will find awakening is in the midst of washing the dishes and mowing the lawn and looking after your family. It's not separate from that at all. It can appear that way, but it's not. It's daily life we're talking about. So forget about spirituality. It's all, it was, when I started, it was all about spirituality. So, therefore, as a seeker, as I identified as a seeker, that was great, because a seeker is a good person. So there was a motivation to identify as a seeker, because obviously I'm a good person if I'm a seeker, and a lot more in that one too. But now I see it's not about spirituality at all. That was just a portal that people went through back in the day. These days it's about everyday daily life. This is basic psychology, not spirituality. That's what it's about now. Now, a lot of people won't agree with me on that one, but as I see it, it's fundamental human nature we're talking about. And the corruption of fundamental human nature is what we're looking to be liberated from.
Yeah. So the frustration is born out of, like, I noticed, I stopped reading the book I got. I read a certain distance, and it's really after the session where I kind of had a bit of clarity around. We were talking about the visual field, and we did a little practice and stuff, and I'm just like, well, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, so you're not going to break through that one until you get some of the more fundamental stuff out of the road. So when you're talking about the visual field, immediately you're talking about Feta 6 stuff. And to be able to get through that, you have to have cleared away some of the earlier Feta stuff. And so, you're ahead of yourself, and the consequence there is that you're running up against a brick wall. You're not really. I mean, it is possible that you can
Yeah.
see through that stuff, but it's it's like you're carrying a bag of cement as you enter this marathon. So drop the bag of cement, go back and get rid of the fundamental stuff first before you get into that. That's my thoughts anyway.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
6 and 7 stuff and the distance thing it's not it it is 6 and 7 fetters, and it's not one. One is the illusion of self, is the belief in the self. 6 and 7 is the belief in depth perception and distance, but that's not anything to do with one. Most people probably that break the first fetter don't ever run into the 6th and 7th fetters. They're not even aware of them or anything. It's fun to play around with, and it's good to make you look at the fact that thought is not all it's cracked up to be. Let me ask you a question, Dennis. What is a belief?
I suppose it's a thought, Paul, or maybe a recurring thought that we have adopted.
Okay, what is adopted?
I don't know, is my first answer. I'm looking for the adoptedness, or what it is, or where it is, or how it.
And while you're doing that, notice the process that Paul's taking you down.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel like saying now that adopted is just another thought. So like a belief is a thought, is a thought, is a thought.
Yep. So I say a belief is a thought that has another thought hanging off it that says that the first thought is true.
But is that thought that says that first thought is true, is that thought true?
Well, yeah, it has another thought hanging off it that says it's true.
Yeah, they're
And
slippery,
on
aren't
and on
they?
and on forever.
Yeah, yeah. The second thought, yeah. Then the third,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're on the thought train. I was going to say the gravy train, but it's the thought
Mm.
train.
Yeah.
So when you say you have you're stuck on this, I believe I'm not awake. You see that the word believe or belief is a little bird that flies around all over the place and doesn't land anywhere.
I'm not sure
Doesn't
if I
really
see it like
doesn't
that,
really
Paul.
point. Let me ask you another question. When you say you believe something, you say, I am Dennis, and you believe that thought to be true. Is there a feeling that arises with that feeling? Is there a feeling when I say, no, there is no Dennis? Is there a feeling that comes up when I say, no, there is no Dennis? Never was born, just a creation, a fiction, doesn't exist, never will. Does a feeling come up with that?
There's not an obvious feeling, but if I was to say anything just intuitively, it's maybe just a little bit of relief, Paul. With no strong emotion with that. Like I feel like I have clarity around that kind of already, around like Dennis, the name, the label. Like what even is Dennis? It's a concept, or it's a collection of thoughts stored in memory. Then I might say, well, there's a body, so I'm the body. But then now that one would be a stickier one to try and get see through.
Okay, you don't actually have a body. How's that feel?
It
There's a
just
body there, but it isn't yours. How does that feel?
I I don't feel anything. I'm checking for a feeling, even subtle. Like, is there fear? Is there happiness? Is there what? Anything else?
So the mere fact that you didn't have a defensive reaction, it tells me that yeah, you're past that point. Okay, you're in the middle of this, whatever it is, and you're
Yeah, it's
past that.
good.
But you are still identifying with something. What is that something?
Well, do you know what I noticed actually? Just as you started to talk, Vince, it just, I don't know what it is when just someone else takes the space so you can see a bit clearer. There's definitely a loads of frustration. And I kind of thought, I don't fucking care. How does that feel? And that's the sense of, are you the body, you Dennis? Oh, I don't care. What the fuck has that got to do with anything? Like, that's my attitude.
So you're identifying with that frustration. Is that
Definitely.
Dennis?
No, it's just frustration.
Mm-hmm. But it's your frustration.
Yeah, I'm back heavily identified with thoughts again. Like, whatever's happened, it feels like all the years' work. There was a period when I was coming to these classes these thoughts, and I felt like there was a bit of progress and a bit of clarity and some clear seeing a little bit of the time, and then it's like I've just fucking gone straight snakes and ladders. I've gone down the snake to the start again. Like I don't know. I can't find my bearings to kind of go, well, let's go on to step one again. We'll make it up again. I don't even know where step one is anymore. Like,
Well, there's no step one anymore. You're past that. So that's the point. So yeah. So but yeah, I get the feeling of sliding down the ladder, but that's the old way of thinking, right? That's again believing in thought, right? You cannot go backwards. You haven't gone backwards. You haven't slid back down to the bottom of the ladder. What you've done is you've kind of gone down a different ladder. And the bottom of that different ladder is not nowhere, it can't even be related to that first ladder. Right? So you're not back where you started from at all. You're at a different level, but still at a basic level, but it's a different one. You can't go backwards. You can't unsee what you've seen. Right. So you couldn't believe that the name Dennis is attached to anything that you would call a self. No matter how hard you try now, you couldn't believe that again because you're already past that one. But this, whatever it is that you're attached to, is much more subtle. But as I say, it's not. Don't get the idea that you're back at square one. You're not. It's a new square one, if you like, but it's not the same one.
yeah, I'm back identifying with thoughts,
Yeah.
and they feel quite sticky and heavy, and that's what I mean when I say back to square one. It's like,
Yep. I get it. Yeah.
What's sticky and heavy?
did I say that, Paul?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah,
Just then.
they feel
Yeah.
sticky and heavy. You said they feel sticky and heavy. So tell me what
More,
sticky and heavy is.
more thoughts, Paul.
But what's the
See,
feeling?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, what's the feeling?
What's the
Disappointment,
sensation? Frustration?
frustration.
Okay, let's look at that. Frustration. When you say, I am not awake, and there's frustration associated with that, does what you're calling frustration prove that that statement is true? That I am not
No,
awake?
no, it's actually it's independent of it. It's separate. It feels, yeah.
So tell me what so tell me what excuse me, tell me what frustration is now.
Tell you what it is or where it is. Would you say?
What what it is.
It's a thought with feeling or sensation attached in the body, I think.
Okay, good. Does that sensation prove the thought true or false?
No, it doesn't prove it true or false, but it feels like it gives it validity or weight because of the sensation in the body.
Okay, what is giving it more weight?
Every time you do that, I start laughing.
That's good.
Uh,
Look, what is
you're
giving
calling
it
me
more
out.
weight?
Yeah, yeah.
No, he's doing what you need to learn to do for yourself, which is always whatever it appears to be there, you go underneath it. So when you learn to do that for yourself, all of a sudden you'll be just recognizing
Yeah,
immediately that it's what you're believing is a thought.
yeah. So if I get under those thoughts, which I'm going to say, Paul, are more thoughts, I'm just left in the sensation of it or in sensation.
So giving the thought more weight is the thought is associated with a sensation.
What I said, the sensation makes the thought more, gives it more weight, like the sensation or the reaction in the body.
What do you want?
So what is you're telling me sensation causes weight, but you're still not telling me what weight is, what makes it heavier. You're telling me a sensation causes it, but what is the heaviness?
Get off.
I feel like saying sadness.
Okay, so you have a sensation you've labeled as sadness.
Yeah,
Does
all the
that,
labels and thoughts are just to avoid the sensation, isn't it?
or what I'm looking for is what is the causal connection between the thought and the sensation, which you label as sadness now? Does
Yeah,
the feeling prove any thought to be true? If you're saying a sensation or frustration makes the thought true, I am not awake, how is that causal? Where is that link that you're establishing there? How does a sensation prove a thought true?
um, but when I look at it logically, it can't. A sensation can't prove a thought true or false. So I'm just believing it. Um, because there's all of these other beliefs on top of it about what awake looks like or what it should feel like, what it should be like, what it will be like. Endless amounts of years of shite on top of it.
So
But
you
in
loop
reality,
back around. So you loop right back around to the start. So what is a belief? Which is where we started.
Ooh,
yeah,
Maybe you'll define it differently now. What is a belief?
no, it's the same. It's a thought. Um, but it feels visceral. It feels like it's in the body. There's a sensation with it, or it feels like it's grounded in the body in some way.
so what comes to mind here is that it's something you've heard me say before. Feelings, feelings have a certain have a certain feeling. Feelings have a feeling of validity about them because it's like that's what the body's experiencing. But if you recognize that a feeling is a sensation with a thought attached to it, with a story attached to it. And I put it the other way around to what you put it earlier. You said it was a story with sensation attached to it. But regardless, but there is a special bond between the sensation and the stories that go with the sensation. And that special bond, that's the stickiness, that's the hook, if you like, into belief. That's the expression of belief is the relationship between the stories and the sensation that make up a feeling. That's why it feels valid. That's why you think that when you've got a feeling, it feels like it's solid and real and so on. But so by moving towards the sensation and noticing the stories that are there, but not engaging with them because you don't want to get sucked into them because it's a rabbit hole. but by just noticing what they're about and what they are as you approach the sensation, uncouples them. And then the belief is seen through. It's not a belief. There's no longer that stickiness. That hook is gone.
Yeah, I'm doing it while you're saying it, and now it's just all about sensation.
Yes. And sensations have no information, no instruction. They are just sensation. All of the
Yeah.
other stuff comes with the stories that are attached to them. This is major. This is really big stuff.
Like there is a desire to label it sadness, or there's a habitual something going that sadness, but regardless of that, lift that label off and just back to sensation.
Yes, yes. So what happens with labels is that they are they're a false trail, if you like. So they point to something, but if you stop at a label, then what you've got is the sensation plus the story, and the attachment between the two is there. It's always there in the label that you've got both of those things. You've got to get under the label to look at the detail of what's going on before they can separate the story and the sensation. So when you stop at label, you're always going to be in trouble, because labels are socially defined as well. And what we're looking for is something underneath that level.
So is that the practice then? Just feel what you're feeling.
Well, that's a way to decouple the thoughts and therefore to allow thoughts to lose their stickiness, their attractiveness.
Yeah, they keep you away from the feelings or the sensations,
Yeah.
or they appear to.
Yep. So interestingly, what you were talking about before, when you were talking about Theta 6 stuff, about looking at the distance and that kind of stuff, that's if you see this as a spiral, this whole process as a spiral, you've come a full 360 degrees by the time that you're looking at that Theta 6 stuff, right? So what we start with on the first 360 degrees is all your thoughts are bullshit. All your thoughts are going to lead you astray. Well, when you've done the full 360 and you're on the next level up on the spiral looking at Theta 6 stuff, thoughts become something different. But at the stage that you're at, you can assume that all thoughts are going to lead you astray.
Yeah, that's helpful. It's kind of brought me back a bit. I felt like I've lost my memory or something. I've lost my ability to even, like when you were pointing me there, I was like, oh, I pointed people to this before. I'm like, what the fuck's going on with me? Like that's why I wasn't going to come on. Nothing to report. Nothing to, no progress. I'll come back in a month or two if I've anything to say. Otherwise I'm just wasting people's time.
You're definitely not doing that.
Well, you might also look sometime when you're just noticing thoughts. Notice that if you have a good feeling, how that seems to affect the truth or falsity of the thought. Or if you have a bad feeling, how that seems to affect the truth or falsity of the thought. Not that either one proves the truth or falsity of the thought. It just seems that way. That's the glue Vince was talking about, which doesn't really exist. You follow? So if you're stuck on something, just ask yourself, how does that make me feel? And does that feeling prove the truth or falsity of the statement or the thought? And see if there's an influence there. I think you'll find it.
Well, when you asked that, Paul, I kind of could see that it doesn't. It doesn't prove it's true or false. And there's some knowing of a separateness between the feeling and a thought. And I see it kind of in my mind, I see it above the feeling, and they're not connected then. And the feeling can't prove a thought true or false. In fact, they're separate. And suddenly the thought just dissolves, and it's all about feeling.
Good.
But why ask? No, so why ask the question? Should I? That's why you asked the question. I'm imagining. Yeah, the mind is looking for something out of that question. When you ask it, it's like, well, what are you asking for? Which is more thoughts.
Just asking you to notice.
Now, in spite of everything we've said, it's not appropriate to see thoughts as the enemy. Like, you can't stop them. You don't know where they come from. You don't know where they go to afterwards. Their thoughts are thoughts and they're there. But you can practice not engaging with them. So you can allow them to do their thing in the background. And if they demand attention and they come to the foreground, you can just flick them over into the background where they continue to go and do their thing, but you're not involved with them. So don't see them as enemies, and don't imagine that an awake person doesn't have any thoughts anymore.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of heavy emotion, heavy sensation. It feels like there's a lot of emotion and sensation, and my mind is going back to, well, could this be a result of seeing, having a moment of clarity, and now something else is coming up for.
So did you see what just happened? Right? That the mind went off looking for an explanation.
Of the sensations and feelings, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a thought that you can just flick into the background and go, just stay with what is apparently there, what I call this, your current experiencing, which includes those thoughts, but you don't have to engage with them. Just push them into the background and stay with what is there. And that's going to be sensation, isn't it? So
Yeah.
sensation is a way of getting out of the old habits. It's a way of separating feeling into sensation and thoughts. And then just flick the thoughts into the background, stay with the sensation until the next thing turns up. Now, once you get the hang of that, you don't have to think about it or consciously do it. It will start to happen automatically.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Vince. Thanks, Paul. I'll sit with sensations for a while.
And every time you find yourself looking to explain them or even describe them, flick that stuff off into the background and just go back to the actual sensation. And it's going to change. It's going to morph. And every time it does, you'll find yourself at a deeper level.
Yeah, I can notice my mind wanting to tell more stories already.
Oh, it's incessant, for sure. Yeah. How have you been, Kenneth?
Am I audible?
You are now, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, things have been pretty good. Some emotion popping up, related to school. Some feeling of helplessness comes up, but yeah, it arises when it has to, and yeah, it's not a problem.
So you're quite relaxed about how you're responding to that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, good.
not initially, but now it has come down a bit.
So yes, obviously sometimes these things hit you pretty hard, though they come in at a fairly intense level. And then, as you say, it's quietened down a bit. Did you feel like you did something to quieten them down, or did that just happen?
It just happened. Yeah, I
Mm,
didn't do anything. No.
yep. Yeah. Well, what you did was not do something. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the trap is don't go chasing it. Yeah.
yeah.
Having an amazing thunderstorm here. It's just absolutely brilliant. I haven't heard thunder so close for a long, long time. It's great. Mm. I can I can I can almost imagine my dog here. I can't see her blurry. Thinking, she's looking out the door at this thunderstorm, going, "What's going on?" I can just project a whole lot of thoughts into the dog.
Hi, thought I'd say hello. I can
Right.
see a blurry dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you've got a bit of a storm here too. Um, I was just listening to what you were talking to Dennis about. I had a bit of a juicy trigger today. I haven't had such a sudden kind of trigger for a while. And there was a moment when it was really weird because it was a very familiar um, emotion, feelings, thoughts, and there was something that said, "Oh, here we go, here we go. This is a good one." Um, it's funny. Now it's all just remembering, but um, it's kind of having quite a peaceful day. And this piece of news came in. It wasn't news. It was somebody's patterns playing out again, blaming, criticizing me. And it's got angry, just so angry so quickly. But I was just watching it, and as you said that you were talking about the thoughts and just flicking them to one side, like they literally just kept coming. The little worms just kept trying to slowly come in. And I just thought, no, we've been here before. This is not, it's not. So I just got on with other stuff. But then I was driving. What occurred was that other person, that I had some understanding of where they were coming from. And all of a sudden, it wasn't about me and me being the victim. It was, there was, how do I explain? I just understood why they felt the need to say what they said. And actually, it was nothing to do with me. And for the first time, I actually felt I didn't get swayed by their emotions. I just thought, well, no, I'm okay. I'm not that person. I'm not what you say I am. And it might sound very small, but for me, that was quite a biggie. That was quite a biggie. And and there was some compassion there. There was some compassion that there was lots of things, actually, lots of layers. Like, it doesn't matter what somebody thinks.
Yeah.
That's their thoughts. It doesn't mean anything.
Did you get
Yeah.
that the really big, to my way of thinking, the really big point, the really big thing was when you said the thought occurred, here we go again. That moment,
Yeah.
you stepped outside of the content of the story and you were just observing the story from outside it. And that's what allowed that compassion and understanding and the decoupling from identification. That moment of recognition is such an incredible release from being involved in the content of the story. That's a really big one.
Yeah.
And that's
And
what
it played out.
Yeah.
It played out just the same as it always does. The same. It was nothing special or big or different. It was quite boring. It's yeah. And it was almost like, well, here's one to look at. And it tried a few times to come in, but no.
Yep. It allows a perspective shift, which is
yeah.
We want this to become the new habit rather than the old one of running down the rabbit holes trying to escape the pain that the other one produced.
Yeah. The thing that was quite liberating was seeing that person was whatever he said, and he does it quite a lot, has nothing to do with me. It really, really had nothing to do with me.
Yeah. And just as a bit of an aside, you can see with that kind of stuff how people who are not awake in particular, but everybody in fact projects their own idea of other people and then relates to their idea of them rather than to them actually. So projection's a huge thing.
Yeah.
I've got something I wouldn't mind some other perspectives on. I've discovered recently with the start of the new American football season that the success of the local team in my state that I have been a fan of throughout my life can really get my heart pumping. And a few years ago, it would cause me so much distress to watch a game that I stopped watching them live. I would check the score when I assumed the game would be long over. And if they lost, I would have that moment of disappointment, frustration. But it was only fleeting. Like it maybe stick with me for a minute instead of, maybe ruining the rest of my day. So a few years ago, I just stopped watching them live. And then if they won, then if they lost, I absolutely wouldn't watch it. I couldn't find any joy in that. That's what I was looking for. But if they won, then I'd be like, oh, maybe I'll watch. I will avoid all of the pain of watching them lose. And so I'm realizing with this season that just started that the practice I had of not watching the games live felt like I was running away from sensations and emotions it kind of felt silly. It's like, what can I really not handle that experience of of watching this team lose? And all I've been doing on the days, excuse me, on the days when they have games is sitting with the sensations, just feeling really into them. I haven't had any clear thoughts or stories or beliefs about it. Nothing has come up to help me understand it, and so I've just been continuing to sit with the sensations.
Thought
Any
that
thoughts?
shouts out to me is the word identification.
I'm identifying as this
I
is
don't know.
my team. I'll talk about what's coming to mind right now. This is my team, my state, always has been. And if they lose, I have to, I guess maybe there's a whole bucket of stuff that seems to mean. I've got to deal with the onslaught of, I mean, I don't even have friends who are fans of the other teams that I talk to, but I've got to, like, it's like the criticism or the bragging or the shouting of, we won and you lost is something that's going to come and attack me.
Mm.
That's one thing that just came up.
So, Jeremy,
Nothing.
what also comes to mind here is something that an extension of that that I wonder about with you, and that is that it seems fairly common here in Australia that we have almost a national attitude towards American. Americans that they're brainwashed into thinking that America is great. America is a leading country in the world and whatever. And especially since the advent of Trump, etc., Australia is changing their attitude, and they still believe in that fact that Americans are brainwashed, but now it has no basis in reality. In fact, we pity Americans having to put up with the shit that they put up with. They've got the worst health system in the world, you know, that they think it's the land of the free, and yet they're more controlled than anybody. They've got this stupid thing with guns where they have more massacres every day than we have in 5 years, and so on and so on, you know. So there is this idea that Americans are to be pitied because they live in delusion about their status in the world, and I don't know how, you know, that's just the way it comes out of my mouth. So I'm interested in how you feel about America, and is that a version of how you feel about your football team? I should ask Paul, but he'll give me a lawyer's response to it.
I guess I would. I do sense that there would be similar stories and emotions if the United States had gotten into a war, and I felt that losing that war would have very bad consequences to my daily life. I feel like the wars that the United States has been involved with, directly, maybe since after 9/11, none of them have really felt threatening, and so I don't have that emotional attachment that I seem to have with with football. But it
How
made
do you
me
feel about the
realize,
fact that the way we see it is that America lost the war in Vietnam,
you're
got
right,
severely
and
trounced, you know? Yeah.
and I've got that doesn't bother me.
Yeah, because it was over there. It didn't affect your daily life.
But thinking about the country made me realize that I have this same sort of emotional or attachment or identification related to the upcoming election.
Yeah.
The same anxiety and adrenaline will happen election night if I'm watching the coverage. The same anticipation for the result if I were to ignore everything that's happening that night and I wake up on Wednesday. Like, not knowing what has already happened. See, actually, this is something that came with even with the football. Even if I don't watch the game, there's this I know that the game is happening and I don't know the result, and that even causes these emotions, feelings, thoughts to arise. And so all ignoring it does is just delay what is inevitable anyway, of like learning of the result. But but recently, as I've been trying to look into this, I haven't been able to find, like, it's like there's this sense that I'm afraid of what will happen if the expectation if the result that I seem to be attached to doesn't happen,
Yeah.
that if that
So
doesn't
this is
happen, it's
my
going to hurt
question.
me.
What is the connection? You know, whether and you can look at both the football team and the nation in terms of a similar connection. But what is the
Yep.
connection? You know, that fear of losing or the joy of winning, it's that connection between that and you that is what we need to find. And it's easy to
I
say
don't know.
it represents something, but that's kind of like a story that pushes it away, isn't it? You know, because it more than represents, it actually there are hooks into you about, is it about winning and losing or something else?
I don't know.
All right, well, let's play it another way. Let's say Trump gets elected. It almost would be universal, except for a couple of exceptions, that the whole rest of the world will go, what the fuck? How can that be? So they will lose any respect they ever had for America. That the whole of America was so stupid as to elect a stupid person, you know, who with multiple bankruptcies, et cetera, to run the country. How, you know, so how would you feel about that? Any respect that America ever had about being a savior, and they certainly did end World War II, et cetera, right? But any respect that they ever had would be gone.
That doesn't seem like that would bother me,
Right.
and it's not resonating. What did come up though, as you were saying that, is there's something about like not knowing what's going to happen or not being able to control what's happening. It's in that space of uncertainty.
Yes.
Once the actual I guess even to tie this back to the football game.
Yeah, so the
Once
game
I
is the thing, yeah. So
once I know this also applies to politics. So either one is is fine to work with because I realize that they both apply. But once I know the answer, and then it's like I can look at, okay, this is what
yes. So it's a not
happened.
knowing.
I
Yeah.
can accept it, but it's the not knowing that I seem to have the trouble with.
Right. But interestingly, if you watch the game, there's a not knowing, especially at the beginning of the game, but as it progresses, there's probably less not knowing because you see the way it's going. But when you don't watch it, that not knowing is going to be even bigger, isn't it? And yet you've chosen to not watch it in order to reduce some emotion about it.
Yeah. It made me realize that during the game, it feels worse because there's a not knowing of every play. It's happening over and over and over of how is this next play going to pan out, and then I get the result, and whether it's good or bad, it's fine. It's the anticipation.
Yeah. So you iron out all of that by not watching it.
And once I stopped watching, I would forget about it, and I wouldn't think about it, and then maybe later that evening, I'm like, oh, today was Sunday. There was a game today. I wonder how they did. And so it's actually made me realize that I can make, by trying to avoid the experience, I'm not necessarily doing that successfully, because if I know that the event is happening, the uncertainty arises. And this happened even today. Like I was doing some other stuff. I wasn't watching the game, and I'd be like, "Oh, I wonder if I should check the score." And it was like, damned if I did, damned if I didn't. And I was like, "Oh, well, if I don't check the score, what am I afraid of? If I do check the score, what am I um, what am I feeding? Like, what urge am I just satisfying?" Um, but there's something about the anticipation of something that I don't have any control over. Like the feeling of that uncertainty. There's, I don't know. I sense that there's something there. Well, this has been helpful to narrow the
Yeah,
narrow the
yeah.
search a little bit.
So it seems like you're now focused on what's the uncertainty about.
Yeah.
So again, as I always say, it's not about what comes up; it's about what triggered that. So uncertainty is what comes up. What triggered that? What is it? What is underneath that?
Jeremy, yeah, sorry, I thought I was muted. Well, I was following along with you when you originally talked about it, and just for whatever it's worth, what came up for me was, could there be a trigger or a bit of juice around the sort of my or mine, my team, my country, my my president, or there's something in it's mine, me, and then I was kind of noticing that it felt very young, like when we're kids and we start to realize the separation, and this is my toys and my stuff, and it helps us form part of our ego. And then I was thinking, to feel it, you'd have to feel the shame of that, and then it also helplessness came up too, which you mentioned as well. So I don't know if there's some identification around my or mine.
That's
Exactly.
that's definitely
That's what I
part of
was
it, if not a big bulk of it. I can watch.
exactly. My is identification with it. It's your team. If my
Yep.
two local teams were to play, you wouldn't care one way or the other. So what does my, which is a thought, what is that pointing to in you? Vince has pointed to it, but what do you see with the word my specifically?
And I would say, what feeling or sensation is under that mine?
Yeah.
Would it be helpful to consider how you feel about um, two teams in Canada playing against each other compared to your team?
Oh, I know that I can much more thoroughly, or I seem to be able to enjoy watching a sporting event that's got nothing to do with a team that I'm a
Yeah.
fan of.
Right. So
Actually, yeah,
if you're watching some other team, you can focus on the skill factor. But
right.
when you're watching your team, it's what the skill factor means that you're hooked into, not the skill factor itself.
Right. there was something, I don't know if it was you, Paul, a moment ago, but like I've had awareness of the sensations that have been in my body throughout this conversation and earlier related to the game. I can feel the heart. I've got like this sort of contraction and heat in the upper part of my body.
Is that
That's what I was looking into. I sure can't find my or me in it.
Let's approach it from a slightly different angle. You said upper part of your body. That's pretty vague. But I saw your hands doing something. Do that again with your hands. Where's that sensation?
Like right in around here, towards the front. Well, it's not there anymore. No, maybe the most noticeable thing is a little bit of like a little line of energy at each of my arms along here.
So what would you say that energy wants to do? Does it want to make your hands do something or your arms?
I don't know. It's already seemed to have faded.
Yeah, it's a problem with this stuff. As soon as you get close to it, it does go away, doesn't it? Yeah. So one of the things you can do, and probably when you're by yourself, is to invent a sentence that gives you a little bit of juice.
Mm.
Right? So if the sentence spontaneously that comes up that says, I want my team to win, right? And then look at where is the emphasis in the sentence? Is it in want or my team or win? Or where is the emphasis? But when that sentence gives you a little bit of juice, immediately look at what the body's doing. Right. And if it's, let's say that energy in the arms, as an example, let's say that energy wants your hands to clasp, you're going to hang on to something. Or if it wants your arms to envelop, whatever you can look at the body, what I call organ language, what the body wants to do as an expression of something that's in your mind, at your subconscious level. So, yeah. So you see if you can find a sentence that you can come up with that gets a little bit of energy, just the right Goldilocks amount, not so much energy. You don't want to be totally swept away in feelings, but neither do you want to have not enough juice to find what it's about. Just play with it. You've got the skills, you've got the tools to do that, and you can check those things. But yeah, that's a thought anyway.
Thank you all. It's helpful.
It's interesting. It's definitely a remnant of identification going on there. Yeah, but remnants tend to fade pretty quickly when we start looking at them. So, yeah. So when you'll know, I mean, it's brilliant that it's the start of football season, etc., because you'll get a chance to check this out every week.
All right. Yep. It was interesting when it came up because a lot of the situations of my life where I was regularly activated have faded. And then bam, here comes this trivial sport. It just doesn't matter. But it's real in my body.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we
But
just love it when shit happens, because it gives us a chance to clean out another bit of dross that
yep,
we didn't even know we had until something like this triggers it. So it's great, good stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
And in a sense, it's like on one hand, it's just sports, but it's not like
yeah.
in whatever I'm identifying with, it's not just sports. Like
Okay,
there's something juicy there that
right. So when you said on one hand and you held up your right hand, right? Your right side is the controlling side. Why didn't you hold up your left hand? There's no answer to that
don't
question. I'm just saying,
know. Yep. Yep.
it tells you, everything tells you something, right? So right hand controlling side, left brain stuff, but right hand, I want to hang on to something.
Yep.
On one hand, grasp. Yeah.
I'm glad you used that word control. It felt like there might be something
Hmm.
along those lines. And that didn't in this I guess both with the teams that I've followed or with the politicians that I prefer. I have at best a minuscule, well, no control over the sports,
Hmm.
a minuscule amount of influence over elections. I've just got one vote,
Yeah,
but
yeah, sure. Yeah.
that's not enough. I can't do anything about
Yeah.
what I seemingly want to happen.
Well, so there you go. What I seemingly want to happen. Yeah. I discovered one recently, and one of those bits of things that came up for me was um, triggered by the fact that a, a woman did something that I thought was wrong, and it was really interesting. And because I had this, and it wasn't a big emotion, but a bit of emotion about. I just recognised that I thought, no, that's wrong. It shouldn't be like that. You know what? She asked me to move my car, and I thought it was so that she could back her car out of her garage. But when she didn't back her car out of her garage, I thought, she just wants me to move because I was in her space. That's wrong. Okay, so that was the trigger. But Craig at the Feder Group brought me very quickly to the fact that I think the world should do what I think it should do. It should be the way I think it should be. So there was this, and as soon as I said that, of course, that's just absolute craziness. Why would the world be the way I want it to be at all? But yet there was this belief that it could be and should be the way I think it should be. Now that's a really interesting one because that's kind of on the verge of control again as well, even though it's not possible for me to control that. But recognizing that I've carried around that belief has been incredibly freeing. Amazing how you just accept then the outcome of things because you go, well, that's crazy to have that belief that I think it should be that way. Yeah. And I'm only relating that to you because I suspect that there's something similar going on for you.
It's funny you mentioned that. I don't know. Well, I don't know why any thoughts appear, but one that occurred to me as you were um, sharing that was that within, it's not just about it's the juice isn't just in whether my team wins, it's how they win, and like um, the degree of excellence and high performance that they display in how they play the game.
Mm.
It's
But
almost
they
like
could do that.
assume.
They could display a lot of excellence and a high degree and still lose.
Correct. In the case of today, they won, but they had they nearly blew it. They
Yep.
were dominating early, and then they had a bunch of mistakes and blunders and almost gave away the game.
Mm.
And it wasn't good enough just to have won. It's like I
Yeah, yeah,
expected excellence every
yeah.
single play.
Sometimes they win
There's like
because they don't, not because they win, but because they didn't lose,
yeah.
or because the other team
And
lost. Yeah.
There's maybe
I
some like
have a question.
perfectionism in here. Yeah, Bianca.
What if the other team displays this excellence?
Hmm.
Do you even notice it?
Oh gosh, this might be, there might be some juice here. As long as it's not more excellence than what my team displays. They can be great, but they can't be better. But even if they are, even if the other team is displaying high skill and performance, oh, there's something interesting here. It's almost like it's not the result. It's whether, it's not the score that matters as much as whether the players played well, the lack of mistakes. I can see there's something sort of resonating in my body right now that feels like it's potentially related to making mistakes versus performing well, demonstrating high skill.
But once you're proud of them,
Pardon? I missed it.
once you're proud of them, it's okay. That's what came up for me there. If you're proud of them, it's all right.
This phrase just came up. It's like a just don't fuck it up.
So what if you said that to yourself?
Ooh, things are warming up. Could feel my body wake up for that one. I feel a stronger like sensations, like sensations that make me want to like get up and do something or brace for impact.
Mm.
Like tightening and
Yep. Escaping.
not necessarily escaping, either fight or freeze.
Oh, okay. Much deeper. Yeah.
And whose voice is it, Jeremy? Don't fuck it up.
feel like it's my dad's, though he wouldn't say those words.
But that's how you heard it.
The sentiment.
Which
Oh,
is
this is
interesting. I was
fascinating.
trying to think of words to say that differently, and I couldn't really. That I thought that was the most expressive way it could be said. But what words would your father say? He wouldn't say, "Don't fuck it up." What would he say?
He wouldn't say anything.
Oh,
It was it. He didn't
yeah.
say anything. Um, I just remembered now that slightly different, but it came up when I was in high school. I was out partying with friends, smoking. I came home. He caught me smoking, found a pack of cigarettes in my jacket, and he lost it, yelling at me. The next morning, I found $100 bill on my desk in my bedroom, and he said, he basically, like, I never want to. I don't want ever want to yell at you again, and if I do, I'm going to give you $100. And so it's like him expressing the anger and disappointment because I had failed his expectations
Because you'd fucked it up.
was just a mortal sin. Like he couldn't communicate that with me. So I only thought of that because he wouldn't use words to describe his disappointment. It was the look on his face. I could see it.
Hmm.
And I knew
That.
when I fucked things up, I could see it. He didn't have to say a word.
Hmm. So that obviously bit very deeply. The his integrity was just amazing, and that had a way deeper impact on you than the yelling might have. Although because he didn't do it that was not his way of doing it. It probably had a fairly big impact as well, but it became really important for you not to disappoint him, eh?
It had been before that. The story about him yelling at me feels a little bit, at least I took away other things just beyond just the expectations, and that was that it's not okay to express anger.
Okay.
It's not
Yeah.
okay to
Yeah.
to
You,
to hurt someone's feelings. It's not okay to yell. It's not okay to be angry.
that's Jeremy. That's what I got from it when you said it. You come across to me as a very zen, calm, controlled, collected guy that never loses it. And it's obviously in the football or the game where when they say football is life and death, and you're exposed to the reality of the emotions and the screaming and the shouting and all that, and it's probably natural, but you're some way resisting it because your dad passed that on to you. That's not okay to show emotions.
Ooh. That's interesting. That I don't know. That's interesting. I guess I'll leave it at that because it's not like I can watch a sporting event with friends and go to the bar um, and see other people expressing a huge range of emotions, and often at the extremes. And it doesn't seem to bother them. Well, particularly the the anger, the frustration with how the team is playing. It's like the second arrow for me right now with that, where I'm feeling the disappointment or frustration or anger, and then maybe feeling some judging myself for having those emotions. We've been all over the place with this. I've got a lot of stuff that I can look into.
Mm.
Stuff that I didn't realize.
So when before I said invent a sentence to get a
Yeah.
bit of juice flowing, I now think that all you would have to do would be to imagine yourself expressing the stuff that those other people express where they don't seem to mind expressing it at the extreme. Just imagine yourself doing that and you'll get the juice.
Hmm.
That might be a bit over the top. You might get too much juice, but yeah. So if you imagine yourself in the bar, whooping it up if they win or punching the wall if they lose, you'll get juice straight away, I imagine. Or maybe
It's
you
not
just can't.
it's not the joyful juice. That there's nothing there. I remembered, well, same team years ago, they had made this miraculous last second comeback. And I was watching it with my daughters at the time, and they were maybe 6 and 8 years old. And the amount of expletives that came out in the moment as I was screaming and jumping and running around the room, I had no, I don't think I had any shame about expressing joy. It's the being pissed off and disappointed that you can't show.
Right. Mm.
But I can work with that.
Yeah, I think Dennis has hit the nail on the head there. Yeah. Good one.
I should say there's two themes that I'm taking away from this, and the like expectation of excellence, and when that's not met, a belief that it's not okay to express emotions that relate to that disappointment or unmet expectation.
Yeah, when I had that, Jeremy, what came up for me was it's not safe to express it.
Thank you. Thank
Just
you
a
all.
bit further.
Okay.
I imagine that your father didn't feel unsafe when he was doing that, but when he apologized with the $100 note, he was expressing perhaps disgust at the fact that he did it.
Yeah.
Just a different version of unsafe, I guess. But yeah,
I think
good stuff.
well,
Thank you,
this won't be
Jeremy.
any surprise to anybody, but I picked up a lot of expectations about how to relate to other people from him. And the theme is, well, I guess maybe the best way to summarize it is if you can't say anything good, don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
He wore that on his forehead.
Yep. Which
Never,
means you control your negative emotions. You don't show them.
yep.
Yeah.
Which I know he picked up from his dad, who was in the war, or I think World War II and the Korean War, and had just some absolutely horrible experiences, and came back and never complained about it for 50 years.
Yep.
And that was something that I think was totally ingrained in my father, which was don't complain,
Yep.
don't criticize, bury it.
Yep.
Sweep it under the rug. We don't talk about those things.
It's not just swept under the rug, it's being stoic.
Appreciate it.
I had a moment of national pride recently. I was watching a YouTube video, another, what the fuck? I just thought it was a very smart analysis, and in the middle of it, I realized that this YouTuber is Polish. Paul, you can't hear me well.
What? Were you talking to me?
She just said, pay attention.
I ask if you can't hear me well because you were holding.
Oh yeah. I was having a little trouble with the volume on this headset, so I was kind of pushing in to hear you better. I hear you okay. Go ahead. Sorry. There was a little bit of an echo.
Okay, so I thought it's very, very smart what he was saying, and when I realized that he's Polish, and yeah, and there was this national pride, and I think it's because I know I am conditioned by my environment, and that this smart guy went through the same education system, that we share some mentality. Yes, it's just that what conditions him also conditions me.
Do you think there was anything to that? Firstly, you thought he was smart because you know, and that was partly because he was echoing some of your own ideas. And then you realized that he was Polish, so that meant that you were unbiased in your national pride. But that the whole thing reflected back at, if he's smart because he agrees with you, then you're also smart.
Okay, he had a lot of comments of people of other nationalities saying it's smart.
So does the word identification fit here?
Oh, I'm not sure about this identification. What is it? I can't deny the conditions that made me into what I am.
Is that good? No, okay. Scratch your head. It's
This
puzzled. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. That's good.
yes, good doesn't apply.
Yeah, okay. But you did say you had a moment of national pride, and pride would suggest something good, wouldn't it? But when you look at the word good, it becomes meaningless.
But you know, it was just an essay on a video game, nothing world changing.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. That doesn't mean it's trivial. It tells you something, whatever it is. Mm.
It's like just like seeing something beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, it is like that. It is. It is a moment of appreciation.
You know, it's like Jeremy was talking about this excellence. And there is pleasure in watching someone doing something skillfully
Yeah,
in the flow, in the zone. You know, like no matter what nationality for me.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and here it was that something like that can grow from these conditions that I also share.
Yeah, it's interesting one that we often talk about being free of conditioning, but when we look at it, being free doesn't mean that we no longer express those conditions. It just means that we are no longer compelled to do that. You know, obviously it's part of our personality and it will continue simply because it's not an issue. You know, if it's not causing us pain or suffering, that's fine. That we have it. Yeah, I was going
Yeah,
to say we have a choice, but it's yeah.
if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So conditioning remains, and it's like a springboard rather than a cage. Yeah.
I was also thinking about your dog because I thought, what if Vince's dog is really blurry?
In real life. Yeah.
You know, like, what breed is it? It's a blurry dog.
Yeah.
Uh, it, but I wanted to say it because it's an example of my playing with thoughts.
Yeah.
How for me thoughts are funny things.
Yeah. Oh, they can be very entertaining for sure. Yeah.
And
I'm going to go around for the rest of her life now, wondering whether she really is a blurry dog.
And this is a pull in my addiction to YouTube videos or other stuff like such. And I was, but there is also suffering in this addiction. And it is because, because it pulls me too much. And I feel like this rat with an electrode in the brain that won't go away from the button. He pushes the button, pushes the button, pushes the button.
Mm.
Until it stops.
Yeah. No, that's a brilliant analogy. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. There is that. I mean, that's what we're like before we wake up. In a way, is we have that compulsion to push the button to get another hit of whatever it is that we're getting by pushing the button. And when we wake up, we might still push the button, but we're not compelled to anymore. Yeah.
And now I'm watching it. I don't know what to do with it. I've tried so many things.
You lost me a bit there. I'm not sure what you're saying.
I mean about this addiction.
Mm.
And I'm watching it, and I really don't know what to do about it.
Mm. Which is great, really good. Okay, because anything that you decide that you can do about it is not going to fix it. So,
Well,
so the
okay, I did one thing. I I've made sure to have install healthy meals.
Say that one again. Have what?
Healthy meals.
Healthy meals. Yeah. Yeah.
Not even to make sure that I eat them, but just having them in store.
Yeah. 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 So can you see that although it appears like you made a decision to do that, that conditions were what led to that happening? That it wasn't actually a personal choice. It just appears like it was. But everything involved, everything led to that happening. So before something like that can change, it's seems to be a necessary condition that it is accepted for what it is, which means that we're not trying to run away from it or change it. And there's an irony, of course, and that's that moment of acceptance is when change will start to happen. But not because we want change to happen, but because we accept that this is what it is. It doesn't always work, of course, but it's something to play with. What if we don't try to fix it? What if we accept it as it is and then watch what happens? Now, I don't mean accept it like a victim either. I don't mean resign, although resignation can lead you to that kind of acceptance that I'm talking about, which is a willing, welcoming, inviting surrender to the situation that exists now. Not about what's going to happen, but what exists now. We get hijacked by thoughts about what that means. And then we start imagining the future, which of course is a bit of an issue.
Just Vince, I just wanted to ask something. I noticed something I do and have been doing, and I was even doing it there when you were talking. It's like a habit of um, thinking about the future And I don't mean the long-term future. I mean the next couple of moments. I'm always, well, not always, but a lot of the time, I'm thinking of the next moment or the next minute. Or, you know, even in this talk, okay, Vince is going to say something now, and then Bianca might say something, and it's like playing a tape of the next couple of moments, the future, and it's like it gives me comfort or allows me to relax in the fact that I know what's coming. And I'm always looking to see if I'm right. Oh, I was right. He did say something. Oh, she did say this. You know, this sort of, I call it futuring. I'm trying to figure out the feeling it gives me, or this, what's below it, why I do it.
Yeah, don't try and figure out why, but rather just look at what it is, and what I immediately thought of was, ah, this is Jeremy's uncertainty principle.
Okay.
I don't know if it is, but it's something you could investigate. So if you don't do that and the future becomes uncertain, how do you feel? And it's complicated, isn't it? Because you can go, oh, I can imagine something, and then it doesn't work out. Well, that's okay, but when you imagine it, even if you accept the possibility that it's not going to be that way, you've got a level of certainty. But the moment you remove any of that, there is just uncertainty, isn't there? Which,
Yeah, yeah, it's like you're laying a path in front of you. You're putting bricks down so that you have a path to walk. And if you don't do that, you're
yeah, who knows what could
you're
happen.
just you're in the moment. You're
Okay, so what you just said, interesting. You're in the moment. Oh,
yeah, it's a way of
oh,
avoiding being in the moment, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. So
Um,
what is in the moment? Oh, what's scary about in the moment?
yeah, I wouldn't say there's anything scary about being in the moment. What was coming up was boredom more so than any sort of, you know, scared or frightened, and it's just boredom.
Well, boredom's covers up something. Yeah, we often think of boredom as like nothing to do, like it's an absence of something, but it's not. It's the opposite. It's really active, and it's an active escape from something we don't like. So it's not about the boredom, it's about what the boredom's covering up, what triggers the boredom. So I'm in the moment, I get bored. Okay.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. It's the same mechanism that will make me watch YouTube videos or do distract myself or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm just noticing subtle futuring thoughts as a way of
yeah,
sort of quietly entertaining myself away from the moment,
yeah. But
this
you said a
moment.
second ago, now you're saying entertaining yourself, but a second ago you said escaping.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they both feel true. Like it's one, in one sense, it's a form of entertainment, and in another sense, it's looking at it the other way. It's just so you don't have to be, so you're not in this moment because this
Mm,
moment is boring.
hmm. So entertainment could be just entertainment, or it could be a way of avoiding something.
I think
Same
it's more a way
thing.
of avoiding.
Mm. So I come back to there is something scary about being in the moment. And it may be underneath the boredom, but there is something scary about it.
Well, what came up there was just not scary, but it was like when I was looking under the board, it was like I can't stand myself. I don't want to be with myself.
Okay, now that's big, isn't it? That's very juicy, that stuff. Yeah. And that's because your first thought.
Mm.
What's the first thought? Are you disgusting? Are you
The first thing came up was no good, no good.
no good, right? No good. What does no good mean? It doesn't mean bad, does it? It's not the opposite of good. No good means not useful.
Useless, isn't it? Yeah.
Useless. Yeah, that was a word my father used to use a lot about me. Useless. Yeah. A waste of space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty sad that you feel this way about yourself. Did you know that you felt this way about yourself?
Yeah, I kind of sensed it all right. Yeah, it's kind of always been there. When you were talking there, I was more from remembering my brothers and them getting that. I don't remember it about me. But you'd have to deduct from that I did get it too, because why would someone discern between out of three of us, but one wouldn't get it? So I don't know. Yeah.
Mm. Well, you might imagine, and it's worth just playing with to see if there's any juice in it, that you did get it, but you denied getting it, that you escaped from the idea that you got it. You suppressed that you were getting it.
Yeah.
There's a possibility. I'm not saying inevitability, but
Yeah.
Which would mean that when you got it, it hurt. And the denial of it was a way to escape the hurt that came with it. Well, nobody wants to be useless.
Yeah, it's touching into that shame of.
Okay, shame. Okay,
it's like the shame of just being, just
right.
existing is shameful.
Okay, and what's underneath the shame? It'll start
Anger.
with, yeah. Okay, usually anger would be on top of the shame, but okay. Underneath the shame is anger. Now, one thing about the shame is it says that you have a certain belief about yourself. Feel shame. It's about you, from you, about you.
Yeah, it's like I'm useless. I'm broken.
Right, yeah. So it's not that somebody else is telling you that, it's that you believe it to be the case. And usually what's underneath the shame would be guilt about being that way. You feel guilty. The shame is
that
a way
resonates.
the shame is a way to handle the guilt. Yeah. And of course you
Yeah.
can be angry about all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, the anger was more a reaction away from the shame. It was like a
Hmm.
movement away from it. Anger moves you away from it. I
Yep.
think that's
Yeah.
why I said anger. But
Yeah.
yeah, guilt. I'm just feeling into that.
This is what happens when we're young. We take what conditions tell us, and it gets embedded into
It's
us.
like, yeah, I'm guilty. I'm guilty, Your Honor. I don't know what I've done, but I'm guilty. It's like
Yep.
when the police pass by, you're immediately guilty. Oh, there's just like an original guilt.
Well, of course, being Catholic, you were born that way, weren't you? But this is a little bit after that, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not born
Um,
guilty, you're born sinful, and then
well,
you can feel guilty about that. Sorry, Bianca?
I keep thinking about these chickens. You told, when a chicken is weak, other chickens
Yep.
will
Pick on it, kill it. Yeah.
uh, and they are not Catholic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Uh, yeah.
Well, Bianca, that just reminded me of my kind of another kind of core belief or something I adopted all my life. It was then I have to be strong. And the guilt and the robs you of something, and then the reaction to it about being strong robs you of something as well. Freedom.
See, again, I have this story running that says, ah, this explains why Dennis is having such a hard job getting through the gate. It is some really core belief about himself that's still at play here. And this would explain it. This that you've just seen, this guilt as soon as you see that guilt, it becomes obvious to you as an adult that it was conditions that created that situation. It's not inherent in you. It's that you took on board what your circumstances were telling you repeatedly and constantly, exactly what you saw your brothers getting. That adoption of that belief gets embedded at a cellular level when you're really young, and then we forget about it. It becomes subconscious, and it affects us. We respond to it like it's existing, even though we don't know we're doing it.
Yeah, it feels like my brothers expressed it in different ways, unhealthy ways, to get attention, and I suppressed it, which in one way is probably worse. But
Do you get the importance or the import of seeing it as you're seeing it now?
I don't know if I'm seeing it fully, or if I don't know. I don't want to say I'm seeing it because I don't know if I'm seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I could say I'm seeing it for a moment.
Okay, yeah. So this is a story that comes up frequently here, and so what I say to you is that there's there's young Dennis there who's getting this kind of brainwashing happening, right? And young Dennis still exists as young Dennis, and he's got a couple of bits of surgical rubber attached to the middle of your back, and he's back there in the past, and he's got a hold of these surgical rubbers, and when you try and move forward, you stretch that rubber, but you can't break it because it's really strong. And then as soon as you relax, he pulls you back till the rubber's right. So what you've got to do is you've got to go back to young Dennis, and you've got to explain to him that he's just an innocent victim of innocent perpetrators, right? They're just expressing what they were taught. They're not malicious. They're just innocent perpetrators of their own beliefs that young Dennis took on board. And so you explain this to him, and you don't need to do it with words. You sit beside him and you just kind of feel compassion for him and hold his hand and give him a bit of love and support and understanding. And at some point, he's going to relax and lean into you. And at that point, you can just pick him up and carry him forward into the present and integrate him into you, and he'll no longer be holding you back. And it's just a great story, but brilliant. If you play that out in your mind, it will change things for you.
Yeah, you were just doing it there while I was listening to you. I could feel the sadness. It was like it's going to take a hell of a lot of convincing to convince younger Dennis that he's not inherently bad and broken and useless.
Yep. And you're not going to convince him with words. You're just going to convince. It's feeling. It's all about feeling.
It's feeling, yeah.
Yeah. So sit with him as long as he needs to until he relaxes into you. And at that point, he'll merge and you bring him back into the present. He'll no longer be locked into the past anymore. You'll collapse time. And no details need to be looked at. It's all about just what's in there. Details will reveal themselves as you do that, but they're not important.
Yeah, I feel like there's a wall up. From back then, there's a wall up, and it's been up for years.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to you before about feeling like I'm kind of grumpy and serious, and the playfulness is less and less.
Well, this stuff made life really serious, didn't it?
Yeah. It's just the sadness to all that too. Like I'm not sure why I'm telling the story, but like I went out with a couple of friends yesterday, and we had a few drinks. We had a good few drinks, and I was pretty well on when I came home, and I didn't remember much when I was in the house afterwards. But my wife was telling me I was sitting down with my daughter. I was chatting to her about she can have anything she wanted for the horse and this and that and anything you need, and she was delighted, and I didn't remember it. And I was like, I wasn't even there for my own. When I'm, put it this way, when I'm kind of unconscious, there's something operating that's free and playful, but I wasn't even there for it. And then the next morning you're back awake and there's that wall up again and that seriousness and that guardedness, it's all there again. But after a few drinks, it all disappeared. It's just strange.
Mm. It's easy to see why people become alcoholics, isn't it? Or why we use any kind of drugs, and all of a sudden that wall's collapsed for a moment.
Yeah. That's a short-term collapse. I think what we're doing here is hopefully a more long-term collapse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely all about the long term, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Vince.
You're welcome. Thanks for the good feelings I get when I imagine that I'm being helpful.
Well, maybe, and I probably don't. None of us say it often enough, but there's always a sense here, always, to be able to come on here is a privilege, and to be part of it and to show up. So that's always in the background for me.
Yeah. And I hope you appreciate how much you contribute to making it that way. Everybody who's here contributes to making it that way. It's just amazing and brilliant and mystical even how it happens, that openness and spontaneity and authenticity is it's contagious. It's just brilliant. And Andre knew I was going to pick on him, so he disappeared. Oh, good. I just realised we've been going for 3.5 hours and it feels like 10 minutes to me. Mm.
Well, 2.5 for us, 3.5 for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, the guiding thing.
Mm. Mm.
I'm thinking all the time about this being strong and the chickens. It really moves me. You know, when I became Buddhist, it was somehow appealing to me that Buddhism was also about skills. It's about being skillful. And like I felt that it wasn't hiding this truth that you need to be strong to survive. If you are dumb and you can't learn the skills, sorry, no hope for you.
Yeah.
Bad karma.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not so sure about. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
I'm not saying that Buddhism is like that. It's just how it's resonated with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely resonate with what you say about the skill. You know, this is very definitely, I would even say this is about developing tools to use in circumstances until those circumstances stop happening. You know? So yeah, there's definitely skill involved in that. Um, but yeah, so but then I say, well, what does she mean by dumb? You know, like people who don't have a high IQ, well, I said unintelligent doesn't sound like the right word, but people who don't have a high IQ, yeah, they can wake up as well. Yeah.
Well,
So dumb people are closed-minded people, I guess.
I've just used a word because it was translated like that in sutta.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
well,
it's
yeah, go on.
about a disciple, but doesn't follow the instructions.
Right.
Sometimes he can't remember, he can't focus, he's easily distracted.
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Sounds like what we call ADHD.
Could be, yeah.
Dumb doesn't really mean anything to me because I know several examples. The first example that comes to mind is a kid I grew up with and went to school, and he was dumb as a post in school. He couldn't follow instructions. He made terrible grades. They just passed him because they felt bad for him. And he's a millionaire today because he knows how to farm. He's got like about 400 acres out there that he worked up. Nobody gave him anything because he knew how to handle cows and tractors and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, who's laughing now? I mean, people made fun of him in school. I never did. I liked him, but people made fun of him in school, and most of the people that made fun of him are not nearly so well off as he now. So the word has never really meant anything to me other than you don't like a particular skill set that
Subject,
society seems to place a big high value on. Other than that, it just doesn't mean anything, you know. It's
Well,
just
maybe it's just it's not for me to decide who is dumb and who is not dumb. But you know, the fact is some people can learn the skills and some don't.
But they can't learn. I don't know that they can't learn all skills, though. Maybe they can't learn the skills they're presented with and then they're judged. But that's not to say that they can't find something later on in life that they can do. My experience is everybody can do something. And it may not be put up as a higher value as many other things in society, but it's something. We had another boy I can think of that he had a true mental handicap, and his father gave him a pocket knife, and this kid could sit there and pick up a stick and carve out the most beautiful things you've ever seen because he had that image, able to reproduce that image of something he saw. So I everybody can. It's not a question of everybody can do something. They just might not find that particular thing it is because if you have a brain, it is capable of doing something if it's nothing other than sheer
Absolutely, yeah.
survival, you know? I mean, if you're still on this earth, you can do something pretty good because the earth can be a vicious place.
There's some classic examples here of my grandson has ADHD, and as a result of that, so we focus on that kind of stuff a little bit, and there are many examples of kids who can't get it in the normal school. And yet I know of two of them that one went to a Steiner school and one went to another school that I forget. I don't know what the name of it was, but it wasn't Steiner. And both of them are doing really, really well in these other schools. But the state school system did not suit the way they learned things. And we all know that there was, from our own experience at school, that it simply doesn't suit a fairly large percentage of kids cannot learn by sitting still all day. Right? They learn by movement. They learn by doing. They don't learn by taking in knowledge at a mental level. So it's really a case of, is it the kid that's dumb, or is it the system that's trying to teach them that way that's dumb? And so in this case, from what Bianca's saying, it's the traditional way of Buddhist teaching that's the problem, not the actual kids who can't get it.
No, it's you know, for in Buddhism, it's not that everyone should awaken. There is a place for householders, and it's fine.
Mm.
Do you have the idea that being a householder prevents awakening?
It doesn't prevent. It's less probable. It's not. Yes, it is.
Less
I would
probable,
question that.
but not
Hmm?
less probable, but not impossible.
Not impossible. Not at all. And I'm talking about a householder in Buddha times, not today. It's very
Oh.
different.
Yeah. Back in those days,
Yes.
there was very much a hierarchical system, wasn't there? Yeah.
Yes, and right now we as householders, we have so much free time on our hands.
Mm.
You know, there was no time for meditation or looking into anything.
Okay.
Yes, I
Well,
would
when you
say
watch video,
these days.
I was just going to ask a question. Bianca, when you say you watch videos, are you watching like non-dual stuff or just videos in general?
Everything.
Is
Non-dual
it
stuff, video games, how do you call it? You know what you have on nose, and they pick thumbtacks.
So it's just
It doesn't matter.
just general stuff rather than just non-dual? Is it a lot of
Non-dual
non-dual stuff?
and
Is it a lot of non-dual stuff?
there are phases.
Just brought up an
Some
interesting question to me when people, and you said addicted, and you can be addicted to video stuff, but it brings up an interesting question for me. If I'm watching mostly non-dual stuff and I have the realization and the seeking stops, could you really call it a true addiction? Because in a true addiction, you get the product all the time, and by its nature, the addiction gets worse probably. But non-duality, when you get the product, the addiction stops. So I don't know. I'm just making a casual observation. It's something I've never thought about before. You know, we say, oh, we're addicted to watching all this non-dual stuff. So you have to say that's not really a true addiction, is it? If that seeking, if that compulsion stops when you finally get it. I don't know. This is neither here nor there. It's just something that kind of came up.
Maybe
So
it's the best addiction to have.
maybe so. It is a compulsion while it's there. So if you say you're addicted to videos, you're only addicted to videos by the percentage of videos you watch which are non-dual, if that helps.
What?
I say if you're addicted to videos, you're only if watching non-duality videos is not really an addiction because that compulsion stops when you wake up, then you're only an addict to the extent that you're watching videos other than non-dual content. So you're less of an addict. You follow what I'm saying? It doesn't mean anything. It was just a
He's
casual
saying
observation.
you're not as addicted as you think you are.
Yeah. Vince said it better. You're not as bad off as you thought. And Dennis, are you useless at one thing or are you useless at everything? While we're looking at degrees here.
Yeah. It's an interesting point actually, because as this conversation was developing, I was recollecting about the fact that the older I get and the more I seem to learn and know, the more I realize how limited and stupid and, all those things I can be. Like, you have this idea when you're younger that you're smart, you're great, and you know everything. And as you get older, it dawns on you how little you know and how maybe not as good as you thought you were. And or maybe that's a lot of doubt coming in. But useless. I do feel like something's changed, and therefore I've become more useless at lots of things, and that's that particularly big around the job front and work and going back to work the last while, and there's still fears around that. So yeah,
Okay, so that's two or three things. So you are useless because you're useless at two or three things. I'm useless too. I'm useless at more than just two or three things. I
yeah, but
can't
I
do
don't mind being
math.
useless. I don't mind being useless at a lot of things, but I need to be useful at my job to earn money. So that it's not like, yeah, I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm useless at understanding diagrams around electronics and stuff, and maybe working at that. But that's okay because I don't do that anyway. But you did trigger something there. Yeah, useless. It's
You
okay
have a
to be
narrow
useless
you have
at
a
a
narrow
million
defi
things.
you have a narrow definition of useless. If you cast your if you say I'm useless rather than saying I'm useless because I can't get this particular skill set at this job, it's a different perspective, don't you think?
Yeah, when I look at it rationally, obviously,
Uselessness isn't pervasive, is what I'm getting at.
pervasive. I mean, everywhere,
Yeah.
in every aspect.
But you're talking about now. Young Dennis was that uselessness was his whole being.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was everything. It was pervasive. Yeah. Whereas now I'm spotlighting it on certain things. I know it's thoughts. Again, there's juice under it, but it's like the thoughts are. You used to think you were great at something, but you're seeing now that you were kind of useless or not as good as you thought you were, and maybe other factors were carrying you, and you were lucky, but you're kind of useless, and it's showing, and you'll be found out. It's all connected.
Hmm. Yeah, that's quite a big bit, that one. You'll be found out. Yeah. That's a fear that see, it comes from before, but it's a fear that can be operative now. And that's part of why, I mean, almost everybody will feel like that in the job that they do because everybody's winging it.
Yeah, but it feels like, yeah, I feel like I know I'm winging it, but everyone else doesn't know it. They're just unconsciously operating, and it's like they're either unconscious or they're freer than I am. And then I wish I was like them, where I was just either in the dream allowing it to unfold, or free of it and it's unfolding anyway. I'm in some halfway stage of in between being asleep and awake, and it's worse.
Yeah, you've got, you know, just enough for it to bother you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's just smart enough to know how stupid I am. Because when Bianca talked about people or stupidity and stuff, and what I've noticed is, let's say those people, my experience has been those people are carried by life and people help and they're looked after, and we're not chickens who, in my experience, that they get pecked into annihilation, that they get carried. And sometimes when you're smart, or you think you're smart, or you have certain qualities, that people are maybe jealous and try to put you down and try to, rock you. And whereas the simpleton or the stupid person is carried along by people and by life. I imagine it might be easier to wake up if you're a bit more simple and not so analytical and thinking all the time.
Probably true there. Yeah.
But I don't know. I only know what I am, and what I am, feels like that fundamental brokenness from day one.
There's a bit of an irony here too, and that is that when you do wake up, you'll know that you don't know what you are or who you are or what you're about. But you'll be fine with it. Absolutely fine. It'll be freeing.
Yeah, and maybe
Any
this is
bit of you that thinks it does know is in the road.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is that what's happening? And then the ego's trying to hang on to a semblance of control by catastrophizing, and it's feeling worse.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's in that process of letting go that it gets worse for a while.
Yep. Yeah, I can go along with that. The moment before you let go, the anticipation is where the biggest fear is. They do describe it as a lot of people will describe it as falling, just falling. And then there's a point at the beginning where you start to fall, where you go, oh shit, this is this is potentially catastrophic. But then after a while you go, hang on, I haven't hit the ground. I'm not going to hit the ground. There's just this sense of falling. So we let go. We can be totally relaxed in that falling. Some kind of trust happens that not going to be the end of us. Certainly the end of something, but not something.
Yeah, what's coming up now is, I think I want this, and I've always wanted and I've desired it, but the mind always offers up teachings that it's here, like nobody could want this, and
I suspect you're a bit past that point, like Jed McKenna goes on big time about who would want to wake up, it's just nobody would want that, if they knew what it was about, they wouldn't want it. I don't know whether you're past that or whether I'm not up to that stage yet, but it just, for me, it feels great. It's just, this is heaven. That's all I can say.
Never been anything but great for me.
Yeah.
Say that again. Sorry, Paul, I didn't hear you.
I say it's never been anything but great for me.
What? What has?
Being awake. What some people
Sorry.
say, oh, you wouldn't want to go through this and this, that, and the other. I don't even know what that means. There's never been really a bad moment since. I mean, it's just,
Yeah, that's why I think I've been listening to a lot of Robert Adams lately, because he talks about that when awakening happens or whatever, and this happiness just dawns or comes about. It's not caused, and like it from where I'm at, it seems lovely, or would be. Who wouldn't want it, as opposed to the teaching nobody could want this. So I don't know, but
I don't know if I'd phrase it in terms of happiness though, and I hear that a lot. What I would phrase it is in terms is content
yeah,
with what is. And happiness may be here or sadness may be here, but there's contentedness with either. So I think that
yeah,
gives people a false expectation. But a lot of people that say, oh, you wouldn't want to go through this, I think those are people that had some unresolved issues beforehand that came up after they took the lid off, and that's their experience. But if you didn't have severe trauma and stuff like that when you were growing up, I don't think you're going to run into that kind of stuff. I mean, it can be a little disorienting at birth, but the people that say it's terrible like that, I think they had some other issues going on. Just waking up, fine by me, great by me. I
I
had
wonder
some
if,
fears approaching it, but once I got through, I said, what in the hell was I
yeah,
afraid of?
I wonder if that is what we're talking about, is that approaching stage. And Dennis, I imagine from what I've heard from you that there is that pretty horrible kind of experience as you're breaking those that a lot of that earlier conditioning stuff. I mean, you haven't had a great experience of it up to date, have you? I mean, well, that's probably a bit simplistic, but it's certainly been a bit painful and even excruciating at moments for you.
The spiritual search.
Well, there's just this wanting but not getting
Oh
thing.
yeah, isn't it excruciating? Isn't it, wanting but not getting the one thing you think, well, okay, I feel like I've simplified my life down to this one thing. Get this one thing. Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be given unto you. Is the old phrase, and that people have rattled out a number of times around this. And it feels like, okay, well, I'll do the most noblest, most important thing in this life, and then to not get it is, painful. Yeah, definitely. But it feels like lately, in one way, everything, like, life is just happening. Everything's going on, and work and family. There's things happening. Life is going on. And in one way, I could look at it and go, God, I'm so lucky. Where I am in my life, to be on the earth, to be happy, to be alive, to have air in my lungs, to be able to use my body and have a family, and like, so lucky. But then, this misery around not getting it, and everything seems to be falling apart lately. Or I'm waking up more to the fact that I'm a fallible human being. I'm seeing myself more clearly, and I'm more broken than I thought I was, even. And it's kind of this, I won't say devastation, but it's like, Jesus. Like an example there the other day, I was listening to Pernilla talk about something, and she used an analogy. She said it's like people who are dyslexic. And before I say what she said, I went for diagnosis about 20 years ago for that. But I was resisting it. I remember the specialist, she was one of the best at the time because a friend got me into her. And she was kind of saying, you know, I think you are, but it's close. And I kind of made excuses about that. I was being lazy and I was using spell checker instead of checking things and some grammar stuff I didn't get. But I could have got a diagnosis and I didn't because I kind of went, it's more. Anyway, Pernilla said, it's like when someone's dyslexic and they have to relearn the words they're reading every time. And that's why they're a slow reader and it's difficult. Whereas I watch my girls read and my wife and they read so quickly and fast and I'm a real slow reader. And when she said it, I just felt real sorrow for myself that like I am dyslexic. I really struggled all my life. And I don't know what else there's around that could be affecting me that I wasn't even willing to look at and see. And it's only now I'm willing to kind of consider, I know I'm dyslexic and I know I've struggled to read and whatever else that's affected me in my school years that I probably suppressed. So it's like stuff is coming up and coming out and I'm seeing things more clearly now than ever before. That makes sense.
Mm.
And that's just one piece of it.
Right. Yeah. Well, that certainly would add to the reasons why you felt useless.
Yeah, potentially connected. Yeah, that's why I learned visually more so, and why I'd watch YouTube, and I can't understand why everyone else doesn't use YouTube. Like people would read, and I'm like, oh Jesus, no! It's too much work to read. And like you, Paul, I listen to all the Jen McKenna stuff, audio, loved it, and that's why I only read all my life. I've only ever read self-help books or spiritual books. That was always the progression. And my wife would say, would you not try a fiction or, these stories? And I'm like, just doesn't appeal to me.
Get audio
Too
books.
much work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have. And I do. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like I'm cheating with audiobooks because the book, it happens whether you're paying attention or not. So you can miss it. Whereas if you're reading, you have to read. There is something I love about being a slow reader. I feel that when I read slowly, the words go really deeply in.
Yeah, I've experienced that. I used to be a really avid reader, right? I haven't read anything since I woke up, but before that, I was an avid reader. As a kid, I used to read a book a day, every day.
Wow.
I'd just read until 2 a.m. every morning, Anyway, so I'm a fast reader, but I've discovered that I can read a whole page and not take a bit of it in. And I get to the end of the page and I go, fuck, I've read that, but I missed it all. I've got to start again and read it again in order to pay attention to what I'm reading. So I can be reading and not paying attention. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that too.
Like for me, reading every
Me
word
too.
is like swallowing. It's like swallowing a brick every word.
Yeah. So you're paying a lot more attention. So you're really paying attention. So that's
Yeah.
kind of good. Yeah. Mm. No, I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? This has just got to be the best entertainment there is, I reckon. Yeah.
Part of my addiction is arithmetic.
I set a goal there a while back, Vince. One book a month. And I'm still not hitting that mark yet.
Yeah. Yeah, when there's so much effort involved, you're probably less inclined to do it. It's not like you read a bit every day, eh? It's probably you read it and then you don't read it, and then you do read it and then you don't read it. So you really, over that month, you only have 3 goes at it or something.
You're describing me perfectly. Yeah. But then if it's a good book and it touches you, you'll want to read the whole thing. So you'll spend a week going at it. So it's done in a week. I remember reading a book a few years ago. it was a spiritual book, but it was kind of written in the kind of Christian way, with Jesus and stuff. But it was obviously written by somebody who was awake. And I remember every time I read it, morning time, evening time, night time, I'd read half a page and I'd fall asleep. It was so powerful. There was something that was just putting me asleep every time I read half a page. I don't even remember the book, but I remember it being amazing.
Mm. Yeah, Bernadette Roberts comes to mind. Yeah. Mm. Okay, well, I reckon it's breakfast time here.
Mhm.
Mm. So thank you. It's been wonderful again.
Good stuff.
See you all next week.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.